Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're
Well,
going digital. Yeah,
right.
we're going deep into the dark web,
Oh,
specifically a place called the Silk Road Marketplace. Now, before you conjure up images of camels and ancient spices, this Silk Road was a modern marvel of illicit trade. Think drugs, weapons, anything and everything you could imagine.
all being bought and sold under a cloak of digital anonymity.
It's estimated that over $1.2 billion, yeah, you heard that right,
Yeah.
1.2 billion with a B, flowed through this platform before it was shut down.
Yeah.
So yeah, get ready for a story with more twists and turns than a season finale of your favorite spy thriller.
What I find truly fascinating about this story is the man at the helm, Ross Ulbricht. On paper, he was a model citizen, Eagle Scout promising physics student, but behind the scenes, he was the mastermind behind this massive underground operation.
Right, and it really makes you wonder, how well can we ever really know anyone, even in today's hyper-connected world? So where do we even begin to unpack this enigma that was Ross Ulbricht? I guess the beginning is a good place to start. Let's rewind back to his early life. Pretty standard upbringing in Texas, excelled in school, even earned a full scholarship to Penn State for materials science and engineering. Not exactly the typical resume of a dark web kingpin, is it?
No, not at all. But it's during his time at Penn State that we see a shift. Ulbricht delves headfirst into libertarianism, the idea that government intervention infringes on individual liberty, especially when it comes to economics.
So he was a big believer in the free market.
Oh, absolutely. He was convinced that a truly free market should exist without any regulations, no matter what's being bought or sold.
Okay, so free market, absolutism. Interesting.
It was this belief, however idealistic or maybe misguided some might say, that ultimately set him on the path to creating the Silk Road.
So we have this young, bright mind grappling with these big ideas. Freedom, autonomy, the limits of government control. And what does he do? He starts a used book business called Good Wagon, even donating some of the profits to charity.
Talk about a side hustle.
But here's where things get interesting. While running this seemingly harmless book business, he was simultaneously building the Silk Road in secret.
Wow, so using the resources from Good Wagon to fulfill those early Silk Road orders.
Exactly. It's a classic tale of duality, isn't it?
It really is. And it speaks to the complex nature of Ulbricht, and maybe even human nature in general.
Right, like good and bad existing within the same person.
He genuinely believed in freedom and individual choice. But the path he chose to achieve that vision crossed some major ethical and legal boundaries.
So how does someone like Ulbricht, who is now running this massive illegal operation, how does he stay under the radar?
Well, he had to become a ghost in the machine. He went all in on anonymity, using the Tor network.
You know, that system designed to make online activity untraceable?
Exactly. And then there's the alias he chose, Dread Pirate Robert.
Oh, yeah. Inspired by the movie The Princess Bride.
A name synonymous with fear and the unknown, chosen by someone striving for liberation.
It's almost poetic in a way, isn't it?
The name Dread Pirate Roberts wasn't just a cool alias, it was strategic. In the film, the title is passed down, ensuring that the legend lives on regardless of who's behind the mask.
That's a good point.
This speaks volumes about how Ulbricht envisioned the Silk Road, a decentralized system that could outlive him, an entity greater than any one individual.
So it was never meant to be about him personally.
It seems that way.
But even with all the anonymity and clever branding, this whole endeavor couldn't stay hidden forever, could it?
No, as Silk Road's popularity exploded, it drew the attention of law enforcement.
And even politicians?
Senator Chuck Schumer famously called for its shutdown.
Yeah, you know you've made it big when a U.S. senator is after you.
For sure. The pressure was mounting,
Yeah.
and the clock was ticking for Ulbricht and his grand experiment.
It seems like this whole thing was a ticking time bomb from the start.
In a way, it was. That's the paradox of success in the underground world. The bigger you get, the bigger the target on your back.
So what happened to Silk Road? Did it just stay this online black market for drugs?
It started that way, but it quickly evolved.
Oh, really?
Beyond drugs, you could find hacking tools, fake IDs, even weapons for sale.
Wow, it became a one-stop shop for all things illegal.
Essentially, yes. Some users even proposed selling human organs.
Human organs.
It sounds crazy, but it's true. Ulbricht ultimately drew the line there, at least according to the records found later.
Well, that's at least some semblance of a moral compass.
But it still paints a picture of a platform that was pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable, even in the darkest corners of the internet.
So on the one hand, you have this incredibly illicit activity taking place, but on the other hand, you have this sense of community developing.
That's what I find so fascinating. Despite the nature of the transactions, a genuine community emerged on the Silk Road.
You're kidding.
People were engaging in forums, sharing tips and experiences. They even had synchronized movie nights.
Wait, so people were logging on to this illegal marketplace to watch movies together?
It's a bizarre concept, but yes. It shows that even in the darkest corners of the internet, humans crave connection and belonging.
It really goes against our typical perception of the dark web, doesn't it? You think of it as this cold, impersonal space. But in reality, it's just another reflection of human nature.
Precisely.
So while this community was flourishing online, the real world was closing in on Ulbricht.
Yes, and it all started with a seemingly insignificant detail.
Really? What was it?
Ulbricht had posted a coding question about Tor on Stack Overflow, a platform where programmers can ask and answer technical questions. He initially used his real name before quickly changing it to Frosty.
Oh, so a momentary lapse in judgment.
You could say that. But that tiny slip-up, preserved in the website's edit history, linked his real identity to his online persona.
Wow, talk about a digital footprint coming back to haunt you.
It was a digital breadcrumb that led investigators straight to him.
So the authorities had their man. But they needed more than just a name. They needed concrete evidence to link him to Silk Road.
Absolutely. So they began meticulously studying Ulbricht's real-world patterns, waiting for the perfect opportunity to seize his laptop. While it was unlocked and logged into Silk Road.
Sounds like they were playing a high-stakes game of cat and mouse.
They were. And for Ulbricht, the stakes couldn't have been higher.
So where did this digital showdown finally take place?
In a place you wouldn't expect, a San Francisco public library.
A library?
Talk about ironic. A digital kingpin brought down amidst bookshelves. And the quiet hum of knowledge seekers.
You can't make this stuff up.
It was a carefully orchestrated operation. Agents created a diversion, a staged argument to distract Ulbricht, while another agent swooped in, grabbing his laptop before he could react.
It was their one shot to capture the evidence they needed.
They knew that digital evidence is fleeting. One click, and it could vanish.
With that one click, Ulbricht's digital kingdom began to crumble.
The laptop held the keys to his entire operation, and now it was in the hands of the authorities.
The game had changed. Ulbricht was no longer the hunter. He was a hunted. With Ulbricht in custody, the hammer came down. Charges of drug trafficking, money laundering, hacking. They even threw the book at him with the kingpin statute, which is usually reserved for, heads of major drug cartels.
Right, not some guy running a website.
So was this like a power move by the government, making an example out of Ulbricht?
Well, it definitely sent a strong message that the digital world isn't a lawless free-for-all, and there are serious consequences for operating outside the law.
Even in the shadowy depths of the dark web.
Especially there.
The trial itself was a media frenzy. Everyone was captivated by this story, this seemingly normal guy who built this illegal empire.
It was like something straight out of a Hollywood movie.
So what was Ulbricht's defense? Did he just plead guilty and accept his fate?
Actually, no. He admitted to creating Silk Road, but claimed he had sold it to someone else.
So trying to distance himself from the operation.
Exactly. He also claimed that some of the evidence found on his laptop, like his diary and chat logs, were planted.
Trying to discredit the prosecution's case.
But that defense strategy was always going to be tough to sell.
I bet. They caught him red-handed with his laptop logged into Silk Road.
Exactly. The laptop was a goldmine of incriminating information, personal journal entries detailing his involvement, financial records linking him to Bitcoin transactions from the site.
So it wasn't looking good for Ulbricht.
Not really, but then things took an even more unexpected turn.
Oh, there's more.
Much more.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Remember how we were talking about the complexity of this whole operation?
Yeah, like the cat and mouse game with the authorities.
Well, it turns out there were 2 corrupt federal agents involved in the investigation.
No way.
Yes way. They were skimming Bitcoin from Silk Road and accepting bribes.
Hold on, are you serious?
Dead serious.
This is insane.
I know.
So the people trying to bring down Silk Road were themselves involved in illegal activity?
It's a mind-blowing twist.
What were their names?
Carl Force and Sean Bridges.
Okay, so what happened to them?
They were eventually caught and sentenced.
Good.
But their actions cast a dark shadow over the entire investigation.
Right, it makes you question the integrity of the whole thing.
It certainly raises questions about whether Ulbricht was targeted, not just for his crimes, but also because he was seen as a lucrative target for unscrupulous individuals.
Yeah, like they saw an opportunity to exploit his situation.
Exactly.
It's a story about the dark side of power. and how easily it can be corrupted.
Greed can be a powerful motivator.
So back to Ulbricht. What was the verdict?
Despite the defense's best efforts, the jury found Ulbricht guilty on all charges.
Wow.
And he was sentenced to 2 life sentences without parole.
2 life sentences.
That's right.
That seems incredibly harsh, especially considering the corrupt agents involved.
The severity of the sentence sparked a lot of debate. Some viewed it as a necessary deterrent, a strong message that operating a criminal enterprise online will have severe consequences.
So making an example out of him.
Others saw it as a gross overreaction, an excessively harsh punishment for a non-violent offender.
Especially given the mitigating factors.
Right.
So a lot of controversy surrounding the case.
Definitely.
But there's another layer to this story. One that takes us from the digital world into something much darker.
Oh, you're talking about the Silk Road hit list.
Yes.
This is where the story takes a truly disturbing turn.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Messages recovered from Ulbricht's computer reveal him communicating with a user, believed to be a high-level drug supplier.
Okay.
They were discussing a vendor who had allegedly scammed users and was threatening to expose Silk Road customer information.
Oh.
It seemed like a classic exit scam, where a vendor disappears with the money.
Happens all the time in online marketplaces.
Right. But in this case, the fallout was much more sinister.
How so?
This vendor, who went by the name Lucy Drop, had vanished and failed to fulfill orders.
Leaving customers high and dry.
Exactly. Then a user claiming to be Lucy Drop's supplier, using the name Friendly Chemist, contacted Ulbricht demanding payment for drugs he claimed he had fronted to Lucy Drop.
So this friendly chemist was out a lot of money.
He was, and he threatened to release names and addresses of thousands of Silk Road customers if he wasn't paid.
Oh my God.
Imagine the panic this caused, not just for Ulbricht, but for everyone who had ever used the site.
Their anonymity shattered.
Exactly. The very thing Silk Road promised to protect.
So what did Ulbricht do?
He tried to verify the claims and de-escalate the situation. He even reached out to the real Lucy Drop, who confirmed that their partner had stolen everything and vanished.
So the threat was real.
Very real.
But friendly chemist was still out there.
And he was still demanding payment.
So what happened next?
Ulbricht's messages reveal his growing desperation and paranoia.
It must have been a nightmare scenario for him.
He considered paying off Friendly Chemist, but ultimately started exploring a more permanent solution.
Oh.
It's a chilling example of how operating outside the law, even with good intentions, can lead to dangerous and morally compromising situations.
So he was considering taking him out.
He was Ulbricht connected with a user called Reed White, who claimed to have connections to professional hitmen.
He was going to hire a hitman on the dark web.
It seems that way.
This is unbelievable.
They discussed the possibility of eliminating Friendly Chemist, even going so far as to discuss prices for a clean versus a non-clean hit.
It's like something out of a Quentin Tarantino film.
The casualness of their conversations is truly disturbing. Ulbricht negotiated prices, discussed disposal methods, even asked for photographic evidence of the hit.
He was treating human life like a commodity.
It's a chilling reminder that in the darkest corners of the internet, the lines between right and wrong can become incredibly blurred.
So did he go through with it?
He did. Ulbricht authorized the hit on Friendly Chemist, transferring $150,000 worth of Bitcoin to Reed White.
For a non-clean execution.
Shortly after, Reed White confirmed the hit, claiming that Friendly Chemist was taken care of.
So Ulbricht had crossed the line.
He had.
From digital drug lord to orchestrating a murder.
But there's a twist.
Of course there is.
Nobody was ever found, and there's no evidence the hit ever actually happened.
What?
It turns out Reed White was actually Carl Force.
One of the corrupt federal agents.
Exactly.
You've got to be kidding me.
He was using his position to manipulate Ulbricht, creating this elaborate hitman persona to extort money from him.
So all this talk of murder for hire, the negotiations, the transfer of Bitcoin, it was all a lie.
It was an elaborate scheme, orchestrated by a corrupt federal agent.
This is insane.
It reframes the entire narrative. It exposes the deeply unsettling levels of corruption within the very investigation that brought down Silk Road.
It makes you question everything.
It raises serious questions about whether Ulbricht was targeted, not just for his crimes, but also for his wealth.
So he was a victim too.
In a way, yes.
This is a story with more twists and turns than I could have ever imagined.
It's a reminder that power, even when wielded with good intentions, can be easily corrupted.
And in the shadowy world of the dark web, where anonymity reigns supreme, The lines between truth and deception can become incredibly blurred.
Exactly. The Silk Road case isn't just about a dark web marketplace. It's about the intersection of technology, crime, and the complexities of human nature.
A story about freedom, power, and the choices we make.
A story that ultimately ends in tragedy, corruption, and unanswered questions.
So, with all these twists and turns and corrupt agents and talk of murder for hire, where does this leave Ross Ulbricht, legally speaking?
Well, he was found guilty on all the charges related to Silk Road.
But what about those murder for hire charges? Did they actually stick?
No, they never officially filed those charges.
Really?
It's actually a pretty fascinating aspect of the case.
Why do you think they didn't go after him for that?
Well, some legal experts believe it was because of the lack of physical evidence and the whole mess with Agent Force's corruption, trying to extort Ulbricht with that fake hitman persona.
That whole thing was wild.
Others believe it was more of a strategic move by the prosecution. They knew the drug trafficking charges alone carried a hefty sentence.
And adding murder for hire to the mix might have complicated things.
Exactly, especially without a body ever being found.
So they went for the sure thing.
Makes sense.
But it makes you wonder how much those murder for hire accusations impacted public perception of Ulbricht, even though they were never proven.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely painted him in a more sinister light.
Like he was capable of anything.
Exactly. And Ulbricht's supporters saw it as further evidence of government overreach.
Like they were trying to demonize.
To ensure he got the harshest possible sentence.
It's a classic example of how media narratives, especially in these high-profile cases, can shape public opinion.
And potentially influence judicial outcomes.
Right. Like, are we getting the whole story? Or just the story the media wants to tell?
It underscores the importance of critical thinking and media literacy, especially in the digital age where information spreads so quickly.
We have to be careful about what we believe and always question our sources.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so putting the legal drama aside for a moment, what about the Silk Road itself? Did shutting it down actually accomplish what the authorities hoped?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The legacy of Silk Road is complex. On the one hand, it demonstrated the power of technology.
To create alternative economies, connect individuals across borders, challenge traditional power structures.
Right. But it also exposed the dark side of anonymity.
And how technology can be used to facilitate criminal activity.
It's a classic double-edged sword.
Powerful tools that can be used for good or evil.
It's like a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of innovation.
We create these platforms for connection and exchange, but we can't always predict or control how they'll be used.
And sometimes those uses can have profound and unforeseen repercussions.
So the Silk Road changed the internet forever.
Without a doubt.
Its impact is still felt today.
In the ongoing debates about online anonymity, government regulation, and the ethics of decentralized platforms,
it forced us to confront difficult questions about the balance between freedom and security.
In a digital world that's constantly evolving.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the rise and fall of Silk Road, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, for me, it boils down to a few key themes. First, the importance of digital literacy and critical thinking.
In this age of information overload,
we're bombarded with information from all sides. We need to be discerning consumers of that information.
Questioning assumptions, evaluating sources carefully.
Not everything we read online is true, and sometimes the most sensational stories are the ones we need to approach with skepticism.
We can't just blindly accept everything we see.
We have to be critical thinkers, evaluate the evidence, and form our own informed opinions.
Agreed. What else?
This case highlights the need for thoughtful regulation and oversight in the digital realm.
The Silk Road exposed the challenges of policing a decentralized, anonymous online space.
Finding the right balance between protecting individual liberties and preventing harm is a constant struggle.
It's a struggle we can't ignore.
Too much regulation stifles innovation, but too little can lead to chaos and exploitation.
It's a delicate balancing act.
And lastly, the story reminds us of the fundamental human need for connection and community.
Even in the most unexpected places.
The Silk Road wasn't just about buying and selling illegal goods. It was about finding a sense of belonging, sharing ideas, and challenging norms.
It's fascinating how this platform built on anonymity and illicit activity could foster such a strong sense of community.
It challenges our assumptions about the motivations and desires of those operating in the shadows.
It really does.
And it leaves us with many questions to ponder. Did shutting down the Silk Road truly make the world a safer place?
Or did it simply push these activities further underground, beyond the reach of law enforcement?
potentially making them even more dangerous.
These are questions that will continue to be debated for years to come.
The Silk Road saga is a stark reminder that the digital world, with its vast potential and inherent complexities, is a reflection of ourselves.
Our desires, our ingenuity, and our capacity for both good and evil.
It's a space that requires us to be vigilant, informed, and constantly engaged if we hope to navigate its ever-evolving landscape.
Well said. It's a journey that requires critical thinking, a willingness to engage with difficult questions, and a commitment to building a digital future that is both innovative and ethical.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of the Silk Road.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey as well. We hope this deep dive provided some insights and sparked some thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.